Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When I bought 6 acres of rugged Colorado land, I wanted silence. Real silence. What I got instead was surveillance drones, lawsuits, and a suburban war led by an HOA queen named Karen. All because I built a bunker. They came to break me. They forgot I build things to last. I bought the land because I wanted quiet. Not symbolic quiet, not away from traffic quiet. I mean the kind where the only thing louder than the wind is your own breath. 6 acres of unincorporated Colorado hill country, no HOA, no neighbors within screaming distance, just granite, sagebrush, and old pines. After 15 years of designing reinforced structures for people who worried more about EMPs than taxes, I figured I'd earned a patch of dirt to disappear into. Literally, the bunker wasn't a whim, it was a plan. Childhood dream meets contractor-grade execution. Blueprints filed, permits approved, soil tested, water table confirmed. The whole thing passed county review with flying colors. I even had a certified civil engineer sign off on the underground drainage and emergency ventilation. I wasn't digging a hole. I was building a self-sustaining fortress with 3-inch concrete walls, filtered air, solar-tied batteries, and enough dry goods to survive 6 winters and a minor apocalypse. Construction started in early March. I brought in a small crew for excavation. Good guys, quiet, no questions. Within 3 weeks, we had the primary shaft opened and the rebar scaffold set for the upper chamber. By April, the welders were laying in the stairs, and I'd started assembling the backup generator room. That's when the buzzing started. At first, I thought it was a Hornet. Turned out to be a drone. Glossy, black, the kind hobbyists fly when they're pretending to scout for forest fires. It hovered over the pit, dipped low, then zipped off toward the hill where the neighboring development sat like a plastic blister on the landscape. Silver Hollow, gated, manicured, the kind of place where the HOA president signs her name like it's a federal warrant. I didn't think much of it until a second drone showed up the next morning, then a third. One of them crashed during a gust and I took it apart for fun. Inside the casing was a micro SD card, and on that card, dozens of clips of my site. A few zoomed into the rebar, others hovered over my toolboxes. But one audio file stood out. 2 voices, male and female, whispering. I told you, it looks like military grade. Who builds something like that in the middle of nowhere? It's unsettling, makes people nervous. There should be a rule against this kind of thing. You know who we need to talk to. The next day, I found the letter, printed on ivory stock, slipped into a sleek envelope, no postage, just hand-delivered into my mailbox like a bad omen. The header read, Silver Hollow Homeowners Association, though my land lay a solid half-mile outside their jurisdiction. It was signed, predictably, by Karen Dallas, president of the board, and seasoned menace by the sound of it. In accordance with internal safety regulations and Article 4.1 of the Silver Hollow Community Stability Charter, we hereby request the immediate cessation of all subterranean construction activities visible from the boundary of our residential development. These structures have raised concern among our residents and may constitute a psychological disturbance or implied threat to community well-being. Psychological disturbance. I laughed harder than I should have. Reread the letter just to savor it. It had that lawyer-drenched tone, vague threats wrapped in soft words. I walked out to the edge of my property and looked toward Silver Hollow. Perfect rows of beige stucco homes with their trimmed hedges and ornamental birdhouses. Their community pool probably had a sign regulating splash height. I didn't reply. Instead, I kept building. We poured the east wall that week, framed the stairwell. I installed the first layer of the EMP-shielded server cabinet and started wiring the LED strips in the main corridor. If Karen wanted to waste HOA funds sending drones over my land, that was her business. Mine was under 10 feet of concrete. A week later, my mailbox filled again. Same stationery, same logo, different tone. This time, it referenced potential civil liability for emotional distress caused to nearby residents and suggested I meet with HOA-appointed safety coordinators for an amicable compromise. I used the letter as kindling in my fire pit. Then came the SUV, unmarked, shiny, driven by a man in wraparound sunglasses who parked just outside my fence line and watched the site for half an hour without stepping out. When I approached, he drove off, slowly but deliberately. By mid-May, it was clear something was brewing. I tightened security, installed trail cameras, motion alerts, cellular backups. I wasn't paranoid. I was methodical. I'd seen bureaucracies do worse than send letters. I'd also seen people like Karen, the ones who think rules are weapons. If she was going to play this game, she was going to learn the rules. Don't bend so easily off my property, especially not 10 feet under it. I didn't expect peace, but I also didn't expect escalation this fast. 3 days after I torched the last letter from Silver Hollow, I found a laminated notice zip-tied to my gate. Bright orange, official looking, the kind of thing you'd see on a condemned building. It read, "Construction activities suspended pending HOA Safety Board review." Under Interim Article 5.7, structures of subterranean nature must be evaluated for psychological and communal impact. Non-compliance may result in civil penalties. Silver Hollow HOA Enforcement Subcommittee. I stared at it for a solid minute. Subcommittee? They had subcommittees? I ripped it off, folded it neatly, and stuffed it into my back pocket. Then I went inside and drafted a response to the county office. They replied the next day. No such authority had been granted to any residential entity in my zoning district. My land remained unincorporated and independent. In other words, HOA rules ended where my dirt began. I printed that response and stapled it to a post by my gate, just for flavor. But they weren't done. That weekend, I installed 2 extra trail cams in the tree line, the kind that send real-time photos via LTE. The night after I turned them on, I got a ping just after 2 in the morning. 4 people standing on the bluff that overlooked the excavation site. Flashlights aimed downward. They stayed for maybe 10 minutes, then disappeared. The next morning, someone had dropped another envelope in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just a single printed line on the paper inside. You should consider what this project is doing to the community. No signature. I tossed it in the same fire pit and made a mental note to rotate my camera angles. Then the press found me. Well, not the press exactly. More like a shrill woman with a handheld mic and a cameraman in cargo shorts. Local online outlet. Their headline ran the next morning. Apocalypse Prepper builds underground bunker near family neighborhood. Should parents be concerned? The photo they used was a wide shot from a drone, probably the one I downed a few weeks back. Karen, of course, appeared in the video, pearl earrings and all, delivering lines like a villain auditioning for a PTA production of Law and Order. "We understand the right to privacy and property," she said, "but when one person's decisions begin to frighten children and affect neighborhood morale, we have a duty to speak up." Neighborhood morale. That week, 3 more drones appeared. One hovered for a full hour until I finally knocked it out of the sky with a sandbag slingshot and buried it in concrete for good measure. I figured that was a fair exchange. The media swarm began to ripple wider. A regional affiliate picked up the story. Then another. Before I knew it, my name was being read by overcaffeinated morning show anchors with plastered concern. Karen, ever the humanitarian, held a community awareness picnic. I wasn't invited, but I saw the flyers posted at the grocery store. Apparently, it was time to talk about mental health, safety, and underground extremism. I half expected the FBI to start leaving pamphlets in my mailbox, but even amidst the hysteria, I kept building. By now, the structure had a secure entry tunnel and an L-shaped corridor leading to the main chamber. We poured the final retaining wall and started tiling the first living unit. Basic quarters, concrete and steel, zero flare. Practical, efficient, not a skull flag or ammo box in sight. Of course, that didn't stop the HOA from doubling down. I came home one afternoon to find a plastic folder shoved under my workshop door. Inside, a printed packet titled Community Safety Assessment Report, Silver Hollow HOA. It included fabricated diagrams, resident testimonies, and a series of mock psychological evaluations. One chart claimed that children exposed to visible bunker construction experienced higher cortisol levels. Another suggested that the visual profile of the excavation site resembled terrorist infrastructure, whatever that means. It was so absurd I laughed until I saw the final page. A demand for arbitration. They were preparing to bring in mediators to settle the disturbance, like this was a divorce. That night, someone left a dead squirrel on my porch, wrapped in a Ziploc bag with a Post-it note that read, "We bury things here, too." Cute. I filed a police report the next morning, not because I thought they'd do anything, but because I wanted it on record. The deputy who took the call was younger than my water heater and kept asking if I was really prepping for the end of days. I told him no. I was prepping for the end of HOA bullshit. Then came the SUV again. Same black Ford Explorer, same tinted windows, only this time it didn't park. It pulled slowly along my property's edge for almost an hour, pausing near every camera, every fence post. A statement, I guess. I waved at it from my porch. It didn't wave back. I got a call that evening from my old buddy Vince, a retired Army signals guy who owed me a favor. He'd traced the drone I'd taken apart to a private security firm in Denver. Guess who their top client was? Silver Hollow HOA. They'd subcontracted surveillance. That was the moment I stopped treating this like neighborhood drama. Karen wanted a fight. Now she had one. I knew it was coming, but seeing my name on a court summons still made my stomach turn. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked neatly between a hardware catalog and a pizza coupon, as if it were just another piece of junk mail. The envelope was thick, heavy, government paperweight, kind of heavy. Inside, an official notice from the District Court of Jefferson County, listing the plaintiff as Silver Hollow Homeowners Association and the defendant as Lucas Frey. The amount in question, $1 million. I sat down at the kitchen table, read it once, then again. Slower this time. Every word reeked of performative outrage. The HOA accused me of causing psychological distress to nearby residents, violating emotional comfort zoning, and, my favorite, constructing an underground structure that may reasonably be interpreted as preparation for violent or antisocial activity. They even included a subsection about potential contamination risks from unverified subterranean storage. It was a legal circus stapled together with paranoia. I called my lawyer, Ella Winslow, a real estate and property rights attorney I'd met years ago during a contract dispute with a military subcontractor. Her voice came through the receiver, calm and slightly amused. $1 million? That's creative. I've seen people sued for noise complaints, fence height, even rooster crowing. But emotional zoning violations? That's a new one. I scanned through the rest of the document while she spoke. The HOA demanded that I cease all construction and dismantle any existing underground facilities until further psychological evaluations could be completed. I could practically hear Karen dictating it, pausing dramatically between words like underground and facilities, as if she were testifying before Congress. Ella asked me to bring the documents to her office. The next morning, I drove into Denver with a folder full of absurdity. Her office overlooked a bank and smelled faintly of coffee and printer toner. She flipped through the pages, snorted once, then leaned back in her chair. They're trying to make an example out of you. If they can stretch HOA authority beyond their map, they'll scare every homeowner in the county into submission. Can they even do that? I asked. They can try, she said. That's the problem. We filed an official response within the week, denying all allegations, attaching my building permits, inspection approvals, and environmental clearance letters. I even included a notarized statement from the county's chief engineer confirming that my structure was non-hazardous, compliant, and legally authorized. Ella submitted it with a smirk. Let's see them psychoanalyze that. But the lawsuit had already done its job. The media loved it. By Friday, my face was plastered on local news under the headline, "Bunker Man Sued for Emotional Damage." A news anchor with 2 white teeth summarized the story like I was the Unabomber's cousin. They even aired footage from a Silver Hollow board meeting where Karen stood at a podium, hands folded, voice trembling with exaggerated concern. This isn't about property rights, it's about safety. We just don't know what he's building or why. Our community has a right to feel safe. Her community, by the way, sat half a mile away, separated from my property by a wooded ridge. She made it sound like my bunker was breathing toxic fumes into their yoga classes. That weekend, HOA volunteers, or whatever cult term they used, started leaving flyers on windshields in nearby towns. Say no to fear, stop the bunker project. Someone even printed my address at the bottom. My driveway turned into a sightseeing route. Cars would slow down, windows rolled up, as if they were passing a crime scene. One guy even pulled over, got out, and asked if I was the apocalypse guy. I told him I preferred civil engineer of the damned. He didn't laugh. Online, things got stranger. A Reddit thread called "What's Happening in Silver Hollow" blew up overnight. Half the commenters thought I was some kind of militia nut. The other half called me a folk hero. Someone even started selling t-shirts with my face and the caption, "Bunker Down for Freedom." Ella warned me to stay quiet and document everything. "They'll push until you react," she said. "Don't give them the soundbite they want." So, I focused on work. The excavation was complete, the support beams sealed, the generator room nearly finished. I spent days below ground, welding conduit and checking airflow. But even under concrete, I couldn't escape the noise, literal or metaphorical. Drones still buzzed overhead. News vans started parking along the access road. One morning, I found a microphone cable running through my fence line. They were eavesdropping. The final straw came when a group of protesters showed up at the edge of my driveway, signs reading "Stop the Bunker" and "No Fear Neighbors." They weren't even from Silver Hollow, just random suburban zealots who smelled a cause. I stood by the gate, arms crossed, while they chanted about safety and accountability. The irony wasn't lost on me. People trespassing to protest someone's right to privacy. I called the sheriff's office. The deputy on duty said they were exercising free speech as long as they stayed off my property. So I walked back to the gate, leaned over the fence, and said, "Fine, just don't step 1 foot past this line, or I'll exercise something else." They left after sunset. Later that night, I sat at my workbench, flipping through the lawsuit again. Between the legal jargon and emotional melodrama, one phrase kept jumping out: potential threat to community stability. I'd seen bureaucratic code before, and that smelled like something else entirely. HOA overreach was one thing, but this felt orchestrated. Karen wasn't just trying to scare me, she was trying to erase me. It started like any other Tuesday, silent, dry, and cold enough that the morning air bit through my sweatshirt. I was down in the tunnel wiring the solar charge controller when I heard tires crunching gravel. Not unusual. Delivery trucks and nosy onlookers came by more often than I liked, but this time the gravel kept crunching, slow, heavy, purposeful, like someone was timing their arrival for maximum presence. I climbed out of the main shaft just in time to see 4 black vehicles roll through the bend, SUVs and a white government-marked van. Logo slapped onto the doors. ATF, County Department of Environmental Protection, State Office of Infrastructure and Safety. The last one looked like it had been created just for this occasion. A man in a Navy windbreaker stepped out, clipboard in hand, flanked by 3 other agents in matching badges and federal boredom on their faces. Behind them, a guy in tactical boots with a holstered sidearm stood watchfully, scanning the tree line like I was about to leap out of a foxhole. "Mr. Frey?" the clipboard guy asked, as if he didn't already know. I nodded. "Depends who's asking. You guys selling cookies or starting a raid?" He didn't laugh. None of them did. We received an anonymous tip indicating the presence of unauthorized explosive materials, hazardous chemicals, and potential structural violations beneath this property. Anonymous tip. Of course. Probably signed K. Dallas, concerned citizen of the apocalypse. I motioned toward the steel hatch that led down to the main chamber. "Be my guest," I said. "I assume you brought a warrant." He held up a thick folder. "Signed and sealed." I let them in, recording everything with a body cam clipped to my chest and a drone of my own hovering discreetly overhead. I wasn't stupid. I'd seen what happens when you let government agents dig around unsupervised, especially when someone on the outside is feeding them a script. Inside, they ran Geiger counters over the walls, tested air samples, opened every food crate and power locker. The ATF guy seemed disappointed to find nothing more dangerous than canned chili and a water filtration unit. One of the environmental inspectors knelt down to sniff a soil sample, then muttered, "Cleaner than my office tap." They asked to see schematics. I handed them printed copies, approved and signed by the county back in February. Reinforced walls, passive airflow, backup ventilation, all up to code. "You live here full-time?" one of them asked. "No, not yet." "What's it for?" "Same reason people install airbags, just in case." They didn't like that answer. Government types prefer boxes they can check. Fallout shelter, storm bunker, survivalist compound, not just in case. By the time they finished, they hadn't found a single violation. Not one. Not a wire out of place. Not a mislabeled storage drum. Hell, the ATF guy even complimented the backup generator housing. "Could survive a car bomb," he muttered with professional envy. Before they left, one of the agents, older, graying, quieter, lingered behind as the rest packed up. He lowered his voice. "Between you and me," he said, "this wasn't supposed to be a real investigation. We were told to make it uncomfortable. No one's ever briefed us on a tip this vague with this much presence unless someone upstairs wanted a show." I raised an eyebrow. Upstairs like county office, or upstairs like Karen's second-floor balcony? He didn't answer, just gave a tired smile, tapped the brim of his cap, and walked off. After they left, I went through the bunker inch by inch, documenting everything again, checking cameras, reviewing the drone footage. I found nothing touched that wasn't supposed to be, but still, the whole event felt less like an inspection and more like someone shaking the walls to see what would crack. The news caught wind before the last SUV was gone. That evening, my face was on every local station. Federal agencies descend on controversial bunker project. Officials decline to comment, but neighbors say they're relieved someone is finally doing something. Cue Karen in her pastel suit, holding a mug like she just finished baking cookies for the agents. "We're not trying to vilify anyone," she said, "but we have to ask, what kind of person builds something like this in the middle of a residential county? Shouldn't we know what's beneath our feet?" The irony burned hotter than my soldering iron. Her HOA sat outside shouting distance from my fence line. Beneath her feet, maybe if she tunneled 600 yards with a backhoe. I called Ella. She wasn't surprised. "They're trying to provoke you into a mistake," she said. "They're throwing everything they have. Drones didn't work. The media's plateaued. Now it's bureaucratic warfare." She filed a formal complaint the next morning. Abuse of process, overreach, coordinated harassment. But she warned me. Even with evidence, fighting this kind of thing was like boxing a ghost. The agents would vanish. The paper trail would blur. The only real thing left was the damage. To reputation, to time, to resources. But she wasn't the only one who noticed something was off. That night, a package arrived. No return label, no postage. Inside, a flash drive. On it, footage from inside a boardroom. Blurry, shaky, probably recorded from a phone slipped into a jacket pocket. Voices clear enough. A meeting of Silver Hollow's HOA board. Karen presiding. "I don't care what legal line we have to walk. That project has to stop. You don't build a hole in the ground that size unless you're planning something. If he won't leave voluntarily, we'll drown him in paperwork and lawsuits until he folds. And if that doesn't work..." The recording cuts out there. Deliberate, like someone was warning me without risking too much. I played it twice. Then again, this wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. This was a campaign. And they weren't just trying to stop the bunker. They were trying to make me disappear into it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the cot in the bunker's auxiliary room, the concrete ceiling above me feeling lower than usual, like the weight of everything above was pressing down. The flash drive sat on the table next to my cot, unplugged but humming in my head like a mosquito. I didn't recognize the voice of the person who had recorded that HOA meeting, but the fact someone inside Silver Hollow was leaking internal audio meant one thing. Not everyone over there agreed with Queen Karen. By morning, I had a new goal. I wasn't just going to defend my property. I was going to expose the machine behind all of this. I called up one of my oldest colleagues from my defense contractor days, Mark Linton, a guy who'd once reverse-engineered a foreign surveillance drone using nothing but burnt components and a soldering iron. If anyone could help me dig beneath the polished surface of public records and bureaucratic smokescreens, it was him. We set up shop in the unfinished comms room of the bunker. I gave him access to my files, and he brought in a secure connection routed through multiple VPNs and a private mesh relay. In layman's terms, we were invisible. Within 24 hours, Mark pulled the first thread. "Zoning request," he said, spinning his laptop toward me, "filed 4 months ago by the Silver Hollow Community Development Board. Guess what? It includes your land, labeled as an unallocated parcel for potential community infrastructure." I stared at the screen. "That was never approved." He nodded. "Not by the county. No. But they tried. Multiple times. And they've been lobbying individual planning committee members. Heavy lobbying. We're talking campaign donations, private events, HOA-funded luncheons. Karen's all over it." That was just the beginning. Mark unearthed a map, a newer version of the county development plan that I had never seen. On it, my 6-acre lot was colored beige instead of green. In the legend, beige meant potential overflow parking and utility corridor for a future luxury housing phase called Silver Hollow Estates Expansion, Phase 2. This isn't just HOA madness, Mark said. They're trying to swallow your land for a future development project. They want to pave your bunker and build a fitness center over it. The thought was so absurd I almost laughed. But then I remembered Karen's voice on that flash drive. We'll drown him in paperwork and lawsuits until he folds. They weren't bluffing. The $1 million lawsuit wasn't about fear or trauma or post-pandemic anxiety. It was economic sabotage wrapped in legal jargon. Ella, my attorney, nearly broke her desk when I showed her the files. This is a textbook coordinated land grab, she said. If we can get this in front of the judge, it destroys their motive. But we'll need authentication, chain of custody, preferably a whistleblower. That meant we needed the source of the recording. I didn't have a name, just the envelope the drive came in. Thick stock, standard HOA stationery, watermarked faintly with the Silver Hollow insignia. It smelled like floral hand sanitizer and expensive toner. I gave it to Mark. He smiled. Give me 2 hours. He didn't need them. 1 hour later, he had a name. Thomas Gelser, assistant board member, HOA treasurer, and, apparently, owner of a conscience. Mark traced the source of the document that originally mapped my land into their expansion plan. The file metadata included a user tag, T. Gelser, HOA V2. Either Tom was sloppy or he wanted to be found. I sent him an encrypted message through a ghost email server. It was simple. I know what they're doing. I'm not trying to ruin your life, but if you're the one who sent that flash drive, I need your help. You know what she's doing is illegal. Help me stop it, and I'll make sure you don't go down with her. He didn't respond right away, but the next day I found a manila envelope stuck between the boards of my front gate. Inside were scanned copies of internal emails between Karen and a private developer named Langford Pierce, CEO of Crescent Ridge Holdings. Subject lines included Phase 2 viability, relocation strategies, and legal levers. In one email, Karen wrote, "The owner is isolated, eccentric, and has no community ties. We push hard enough, he'll sell. If not, legal attrition will do the rest. I don't care what kind of hole he's dug. We'll bury him in it." Ella nearly choked reading that. This is a gold mine. That night, I started drafting my own legal counterclaim: harassment, fraud, abuse of process, tortious interference with property rights. Ella called in 2 more lawyers, one a specialist in HOA overreach cases, the other a former assistant district attorney. We were building a war room beneath the surface, brick by digital brick. I had thought this whole saga was about paranoia, about people being spooked by concrete and canned beans. But it wasn't. This was about greed, land, control, and in their arrogance, they had underestimated the one thing they couldn't outmaneuver with forms and fines. I wasn't just some doomsday prepper in a hole. I was a systems engineer with nothing to lose, and all the time in the world. It was a Wednesday morning when they showed up. Not 1 vehicle, not 2, but 6. Unmarked black SUVs, a white panel truck with no license plate, and a dusty Ford Explorer with government plates. I knew trouble when I saw it, and this wasn't trouble knocking politely. This was trouble dressed in khaki and credentials, pulling up with clipboards and tight-lipped bureaucrats pretending they weren't on a witch hunt. A man in a blue windbreaker approached first. His badge read ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Behind him were officials from the Department of Buildings and Safety, Environmental Compliance, and some guy from Emergency Infrastructure Review, a department I was pretty sure didn't even exist. "Mr. Frey," the ATF agent asked. "Depends who's asking," I said, stepping outside and sliding on my sunglasses. "You fellows get lost on your way to a real emergency?" "We're responding to a tip regarding possible storage of hazardous materials and violations of structural code. You've constructed an underground facility. Is that correct?" "That's correct," I replied, "and every inch of it is legal and filed with the county." "We'd like to take a look," he said, nodding behind him as the others moved toward the hatch entrance. I knew better than to resist. Instead, I pulled out my phone and began recording. Then I activated the surveillance system inside the bunker, hidden 4K fisheye lenses embedded in the walls, triggered to upload live feeds to cloud storage. If they were going to try something, I wanted receipts. Inside, they fanned out. The environmental rep started poking at my air filters. One of the structural guys asked about the load-bearing concrete. The ATF agent made a beeline for the storage room, eyes scanning for weapons or contraband. He found shelves of canned food, sealed water drums, an off-grid generator, and a dusty copy of Robinson Crusoe. Nothing else. "It's a glorified basement," one of them muttered. The emergency infrastructure guy, the one who didn't exist, tried to open a locked door that led to the battery backups. I asked for his warrant. He didn't have one. I told him nicely to step away before I called the sheriff and my lawyer. He did, but not before giving me the kind of look that says you're on someone's list now. The whole inspection lasted 90 minutes. They took notes, photos, and samples from the air vent like I was cooking meth down there. When they left, the ATF agent handed me a document. Not a citation, not a summons, just a report of the inspection with a big red stamp. Pending review. Not a single violation. And yet, not a single apology. An hour later, Mark called. "They just updated your zoning case file," he said. "They filed for a special hearing. They're trying to reclassify your lot as a structural risk zone due to underground instability." "That's rich," I muttered. "Did they test my soil with magic beans?" "They don't have to prove anything," he said. "They just have to make it sound scary enough for the board to take emergency action." That night, I found a small drone stuck in the pine trees behind my solar panel array. Same model as before, consumer grade, but modded with a custom antenna. Its memory card was full. Not of video this time, but of scans. Infrared. Heat maps of the bunker. Floor plan overlays. They were trying to model the entire layout. And they were getting closer. I called Ella. "They're preparing to declare the whole place unsafe," I told her. "They're going to try and evacuate me, forcefully." "Then it's time to go public," she said without hesitation. "We leak it all. The inspection, the forged maps, the drone footage, the zoning scams, the emails. You've been a quiet prepper in your little corner long enough. Time to make some noise." I hesitated. Going public meant war. Not the kind with bullets, but worse. The kind fought in comment sections, local news, boardrooms, and city council meetings. But I was done playing defense. They wanted a fight. They were about to get it. Underground schematics, surveillance footage, and all. I started posting. I uploaded the video of the inspection, complete with date stamps and commentary. I released the zoning map overlays with red lines showing how they were trying to box me in. I posted the email from Karen calling my property a liability zone, and I ended the thread with a photo of the drone I'd pulled from the tree, captioned, "Silver Hollow HOA sent spy drones. I caught them, and this time, I'm not staying silent." Within 2 hours, the posts had over 50,000 views. Local news picked it up, then state outlets. Then a libertarian podcast called Bunker Brothers ran a segment titled HOA vs. The Prepper, the War for One Man's Land. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and tension. I wore a charcoal blazer and left the camouflage hat at home. Didn't want to give them ammo for the unstable prepper narrative. Across the aisle sat Karen Dallas in a blood-red pantsuit, flanked by 2 attorneys who looked like they charged by the syllable. Her face was tight with confidence, as if this courtroom was already her HOA boardroom, and I was a guest waiting to be dismissed. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, began the session by asking both parties to summarize the matter. Karen's lead attorney stood up and began his monologue, seasoned with carefully selected legalese. Emotional distress, perceived threat, environmental destabilization, and the favorite, pattern of dangerous behavior. He produced a binder thicker than a phone book and started flipping through evidence. Statements from Silver Hollow residents, most anonymous. One read, "My daughter can't sleep knowing there's a bunker nearby." Another, "It's like living next to a doomsday cult." Then came the simulations, renderings of children playing in the park with a shadow of my bunker looming beneath their feet, like some malevolent beast. Karen, ever theatrical, dabbed the corner of her eye with a tissue as the attorney claimed that my project had caused a measurable uptick in community anxiety. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Fry, your response?" I stood, calmly handed over my set of documents, and began the demolition. First, I submitted the permits, certified engineering diagrams stamped and sealed by the county. Then a notarized environmental compliance letter from the Department of Conservation. Next came the inspection video, full HD with time codes. I played the part where the ATF agent turned to the camera and said, We found nothing illegal or dangerous on this property. The courtroom was silent except for the audio of my canned goods and solar batteries getting described like museum pieces. Then I dropped the drone files. One recovered drone, serial number linked to a purchase by a contractor tied to Karen's cousin's landscaping business, heat maps, flight logs, audio where HOA members discussed escalating pressure and making me crack. But the killing blow came in the form of an email, an internal HOA memo I'd obtained via a whistleblower who used to work as their bookkeeper. In it, Karen wrote, "We'll suffocate him with process. A lawsuit, code enforcement, psychological impact angle, whatever it takes. He'll either move or break." The judge paused, her brow furrowed. "Ms. Dallas," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Is this your signature?" Karen shifted. Her lawyer intercepted. "Objection, this was not obtained through formal discovery." "Overruled," the judge said flatly. I wasn't done. I introduced my own psychological expert, Dr. Miriam Patel, a forensic psychologist who'd reviewed the HOA's anxiety claims. Her report shredded their argument. There is no clinical basis to assert that a legal, compliant underground structure causes psychiatric harm to others unless coupled with direct threatening behavior, which Mr. Fry has not demonstrated. The judge nodded slowly, turning back to the HOA's table. "So far, your argument rests on fear, not law." Karen looked like a dog hearing thunder, her mouth open to say something, but nothing came out. The judge called for a recess before final motions. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed me. Microphones, cameras, questions shouted over each other. "Mr. Frey, are you planning to countersue? Is this part of a larger HOA land grab? Did you really design missile casings before going off-grid?" I ignored most of them, except for the last. "Only for defense contracts," I said with a smirk, "not for neighborhoods." That night, I sat in the bunker with the lights low. A message pinged my inbox. An anonymous tip from someone claiming to work inside the HOA legal team. "Check their revised boundary map. They tried to rezone your land last year, retroactively." I opened the attached file. My parcel was shaded over in red, labeled Future Community Expansion Zone, Phase 2. Dated 3 months before I broke ground. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it meant their lie just became a felony. The final day in court arrived like the calm before a storm. Karen no longer wore red. She showed up in beige, her hair tighter than ever, face pale under the courtroom lights. Her lawyers looked deflated, like they knew what was coming, but had to go through the motions anyway. The judge came in briskly, no preamble. "I've reviewed all evidence, testimonies, and documentation. This court finds the plaintiff's case not only lacking legal merit, but actively deceptive." Karen twitched. "I further find grounds for countersuit," the judge continued, "for privacy violations, malicious prosecution, and attempted coercive land seizure through abuse of HOA authority." The room went silent. Then the hammer came down. The judge ordered the immediate dismissal of the $1 million claim. In its place, she authorized civil proceedings against Silver Hollow HOA and Karen Dallas specifically for fraud, trespass, and harassment. She also referred the matter to the state attorney's office. As I stepped outside, reporters circled like sharks, but I was already calling my contractor. Yeah, it's time to finish the greenhouse. A week later, the news broke. Karen had been arrested. Turns out the rezoning attempt, forged signatures, the drone surveillance, funded illegally through HOA maintenance fees, and that memo, enough for conspiracy charges. Karen was indicted on 12 counts, fraud, document tampering, and conspiracy to unlawfully pressure property owners. The HOA board collapsed within days. Lawsuits poured in from other neighbors she had bullied for years. I stayed quiet. Let the system do the talking. Now my bunker serves a new purpose. I host workshops, survival skills, property rights, digital privacy. People drive in from 3 counties. Some bring cookies. Others bring stories. Above the hatch, I hung a sign, "Private property, built to last, for the free and prepared."